The objective of creativity is to try and understand why we're alive. I think that if you're worried about whether it's art or not, you're not really in a discussion about what the fuck is going on. Well, we don't really know anyway. Like, who can really say why we're alive or what reality is? We don't fucking know. Nobody knows. The recording of something right now on social media or on the internet is almost more important than the real thing, basically. And this is very much so in art and also like in culture too. I mean, look at all the fake news. My work plays into an inability to differentiate between like what's real and what's not.
We are truly in the full swing of a social media driven society. Although the development of it has been subtle, its impact has been phenomenal. Nearly everywhere you look, you see a hashtag, an @ symbol, or a QR code to encourage you to open up your smartphone and log into your social media account, even if you log out at all in the first place. And what is even more subtle, and at times even straight up denied by a good majority of people, is how much social media has influenced our appearance, how we present ourselves, what we aspire to be, and even what constitutes as attractive, with trends coming and going, sometimes within a blink of an eye. Basically, if you take a selfie, you don't just want to look attractive, you want to look impossibly attractive. Some resort to specialized third-party apps to improve some features or even erase them completely, turning an element of reality into something that can be seen, witnessed, and even believed, but never truly experienced. We become avatars in a sense, wearing digital costumes to hide our true selves. Within such a polished, imperfectly perfect digital environment, however, sometimes the unordinary does break through mediocrity. Someone who challenges what we view as normal or acceptable. Someone who may go as far to say that instead of trying to look as good as possible on social media, he actually wants to look worse, in order to portray a far more honest representation of humanity. One such man you may come across goes by the name of DavidHenryNobodyJr. An ever-changing, ever-evolving, and ever-captivating character played by the performance artist David Henry Brown Jr. from New York City in the United States. David has really made a name for himself within the digital world, sharing countless clips and images of his bizarre and extravagant costumes, each with their own unique theme, to an audience of over 120,000 followers on Instagram alone. Just to visit his Instagram page and explore his collage of strange faces, masks and props is probably enough to make some of you go, what the heck am I looking at here? Well, that is, hopefully, where I can help. After meeting him, watching his mini documentary, and learning his story, as well as his ambitions as a creative, there is so much we can learn from him about just how limitless artistic expression can be, as well as a great deal we can learn about ourselves and the current world we live in. Welcome to another video, everybody. Today we'll be exploring the mind of David Henry Nobody Jr. Despite growing up in a family that cared little for art, as well as having a rebellious attitude, especially towards a dysfunctional father, David Henry Brown Jr., ever since a young age, was always creatively talented, learning to draw with exceptional skill by age 10. During his teen years though, he began to withdraw from reality and make less art, but by age 17, after first trying weed and hallucinogens, as he puts it, his freak within just exploded with creative energy. Even outside of art though, David was extroverted, a performer, a class clown, constantly drawn to ways to express himself in a way that was immediate and interactive. By the time David started formally training in art, he would bounce around different universities until eventually landing at the University of New Hampshire, completing a BFA in painting and drawing.
They really taught, it was like the early 90s, there was no internet. We had no access to contemporary art. They didn't teach us anything further than abstract expressionism. I fancied myself a Jackson Pollock at age 21 or 22. I loved throwing paint. Being hungover in my studio, I like paint all shaky and stuff. And I thought I was the shit. And they were like, this work sucks. But your drawings from direct observation have a very powerful voice in them. And that sort of like is telling about how I process, is that I'm not someone that just makes up shit in my head like some artists do, work from their imagination. I kind of bounce off my surroundings. Right. And in those drawings, like compared to the rest of the class, I was like almost unconsciously or semi-consciously like changing the pictorial space, and they would set up a still life and I would change all the arrangement of the objects and the light source and like add things in, but in a sneaky way, so that you kind of thought it was actually the still life, but it was all changed. And my kind of knack for subverting orders and in order to allow my artistic voice to come out, like, was kind of embedded in the beginning right there.
David then decided he would truly commit himself to being a radical artist by age 22. He would then move from his hometown in Pennsylvania to New York City in 1991, encountering many supportive and like-minded artists within a scene that was totally cut off from mainstream culture. This encouraged David to be as experimental as possible and no longer afraid to fail. And so, with a portfolio under his arm and no more than $500 to his name, this, according to him, is when his real journey to the center of art began.
So I think like being in New York and seeing performance art, and I saw like, the amount of energy that it brought into the room, into the crowd. And I was like, fuck, I want to try that. I think I had done an installation at this performance art event called Organism, which was a 24-hour party in 1993 in Williamsburg. One of the first things I got involved with after being in New York and kind of a little bit lost for the first 2 years, kind of trying to find my way, painting the studio. I went to this thing, I met everybody, they were very open. I did an installation and no one saw my installation, but everybody saw the performance art. I was like, oh, I see. Maybe I should try some performance art.
This revelation that art could be something very direct, interactive, and attention-grabbing through the performance rather than painting or drawing would prove to be irresistible to David. No longer did he feel the necessity to paint a picture of the things that he would witness and experience in order to form a relationship with them. Instead, David could now step into the picture, or even be the picture itself. He could now broaden the framework for what his art can be, and this had kept him creatively diverse ever since. However, it would be a long while yet until he would perform in front of a camera. As David's confidence to experiment in art continued to grow, and the more he began familiarizing himself with his new surroundings of New York, he would encounter many more intriguing characters along the way. David would be a regular at the nightclubs, art parties, and openings around the city, and he would mention to me that a certain caliber of attendees would always catch his attention. A collective of people, some of whom would later become close friends, that eventually would earn the title of the Fantastic Nobodies.
Actually, Fantastic Nobody is really my work. And the meaning of it has evolved into a lot of different things. So actually in the 90s, Fantastic Nobody meant like you would go around in New York to like different parties and openings and you would see people that look like fucking amazing. Like they look like they were famous, right? and you're like, wow, they're famous, they're so free. Famous people are actually not very free, but that was like our youthful perception of it. I mean, there's a difference between real fame and like the public's perception of what it is to be famous. And I was interested in the perception. And then you went to their studio and you realized they didn't do anything. I was like, wow, it's like all phony, you know? And so me and my friends, as a joke and adult self-deprecating kind of way, started calling ourselves Fantastic Nobodies. The idea of like sort of fake glamorous persona or fake subversive persona. I mean, actually it's quite authentic, but there's an element of sarcasm, kind of like punk, with a bit of a wind up, you know? You find authenticity and sarcasm of these characters and the attitudes and stuff. I mean, I used to love, I was a club kid for sure. And I was the craziest dancer, insane. You know, I would take over the whole place. And I met a group of guys that were like the same thing, all super weird on the dance floor. We became friends on around in the neighborhood in Williamsburg, because it was all artists and like there were no condos and rich people yet. And it was just all artists and people partying. And so we kind of met through the neighborhood because we were all like a lot weirder than most people. And I think we started calling ourselves at first informally like Rent-A-Friends. We would like go to a party and like just no matter how bad it was, we would make it awesome, you know? The other guys in the collective would have a very different take on what I'm saying. But that's my take. So there was that, and that kind of became the collective, and the collective went crazy for a bunch of years, and we did wild performances, and it's very influential on my solo character, David Nobody, and I call myself David Nobody from Fantastic Nobody.
Towards the end of the 90s, David and many of his Fantastic Nobody peers were performing all kinds of social stunts. For example, between 1995 and 1998, David and Dominic McGill, a friend who had emigrated to the States from Britain, would conduct the Red Carpet Project, or the Carpet Rollers Project. Both being fascinated in the obsessiveness of celebrity culture in the US, they would roll out a red carpet for a famous mystery client at celebrity-expected locations such as Trump Tower and the Plaza Hotel in New York. The red carpet functioned as a behavioral catalyst and also as a portable stage. A crowd would gather, grow, and gossip amongst themselves, waiting for some unknown star, regardless of who it might be.
Who is coming? No.
I don't really know.
Are we waiting for? Do you know who's coming?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure, but you think is?
This isn't it. I'm out of here. I got a dinner. I got a show to see. I got stuff to do, you know.
When a celebrity's arrival is celebrated with the old red carpet treatment, have you ever received it?
Not yet.
Not me. It's a pretty good indication he or she has truly arrived.
Well, I'll be waiting for that. But the ritual took on a whole new meaning recently thanks to a couple of guys with apparently too much time on their hands. Here's CNN's Jeannie Mose.
When a welcome mat just won't do, roll out the red carpet for a queen or a president or a pope. No wonder hopes were high outside Trump Tower the other day.
So does that mean somebody really important is coming?
What do they got red carpets for? They got to be expecting somebody.
Just as a matador's cape mesmerizes a bull, the red carpet stopped passers-by in their tracks.
So should we wait? If you want to.
We're not sure. It could be anybody.
Only in this case, it's nobody, but don't tell that to the police.
Somebody showing up or something?
Or to Trump Tower security.
So they should be a carpet roll for what?
For the sake of performance art. Meet the carpet rollers. David Brown Jr. and Dominic McGill have been lugging this hallway carpet around New York.
It's 36 feet. It has
a zipper
at 20 feet.
Their goal is to explore the allure of fame in our celebrity-saturated culture.
How magnetic it is.
Within a half hour or so, the sight of two tuxedoed men with a rolled-up red carpet attracted more than 100 onlookers. Friends of the performance artist posing as paparazzi helped. Inadvertently, so did we.
That's a news crew.
Onlookers passed the time by speculating on who might be coming.
Spice Girls?
Is it the Don? The Don's not coming.
Donald Trump? Real police had to lend a hand with crowd control.
Well, I'm giving you 10 minutes. If not, I'm going to personally take the red carpet up.
The carpet rollers kept peering expectantly up Fifth Avenue.
Keep your eyes peeled for a limo, big one.
Get rid of it.
All right, now, it's no limo.
As the carpet rollers slinked away like carpetbaggers, the crowd seemed stunned, unwilling to leave without celebrity satisfaction, unwilling to take no for an answer.
Come on, you know who it is. Come on. I'm
We're
leaving
shooting
now
the
anyway.
carpet rollers, you know?
Oh, no, come on.
I swear.
Somebody called you up and said someone's going to be here.
Meanwhile, the carpet rollers moved on to their next target, the Grand Hyatt.
Making a big entrance. It makes people feel special.
Clinton, is that who's coming?
I don't know.
This isn't the carpet rollers' only stunt. They supplied us with this video of a piece they called Stockbrokers Late for Work.
We're late for work, you know?
Passers-by actually helped them up curbs, helped them when they fell over, helped them use the phone. It's a lot like the old show Candid Camera, though these guys are rarely candid.
We're late for work today.
Are you all right? Dave and Dominic plan to make a real business out of rolling out the red carpet for $100 a roll. They finally did get to unfurl their carpet for an appreciative,
Bring out the star in you. Woo, come on.
but unsuspecting non-celeb who happened to arrive by cab.
Hey, I'll take the red carpet treatment anytime.
Has anyone famous actually walked on this carpet?
Not as of yet.
Quote, "The crowd is the focus of a scenario. The carpet rollers step back from the work, allowing unself-conscious voices of the public to attempt to put the puzzle together. The endgame in mind was not only to document the reactions of the public, but to create a failure in which no one shows up in order to turn members of a crowd into momentary social critics. A portrayal of life as being about waiting for something grandiose to happen, when in actuality, life was about the process of waiting in and of itself." End quote. And it would in fact be during this Red Carpet Rollers project that David would be inspired to start his next, when he would meet a celebrity-obsessed man who would serve as a catalyst for a new character.
It was Red Carpet Rollers where I saw Celebrity Fanatics.
Right.
Like there was one scene in, we're waiting for someone and an actual celebrity shows up, some radio DJ or something, and this random guy with like hair parted in the middle, kind of looks like he's from New Jersey, with a little cheesy mustache, like comes running up, and he goes up to the celebrity who's like five feet tall, and his wife is like 6 feet tall, blonde. "Oh, Mr. Kasem, can I get a photo of us together?" And our camera guy is actually recording it, and the fan's all shaky and desperate looking, and he takes his point and shoot camera and hands it to our camera guy, who's actually Richard Sandler, who's a famous photographer. Now he's older. He was our videographer for a lot of Red Carpet Roller stuff and my other projects.
Wow.
He hands the camera, still camera, little point and shoot with a flash, to Richard, who was a nut with his video camera. Like wasn't attached. He would talk to people and stuff.
Yeah.
And the guy, Richard, takes the photo while he's recording the video of this cheesy moment. And I remember like looking at the footage, like when we were getting ready to edit, and I was like, I want to become that. So in Red Carpet Rollers, we were a catalyst for like people to come out of the woodwork and project like their imaginations onto this reality situation, sort of, you know? But
Yeah.
I was like, I want to examine my own role in this a little bit more. I don't want to be so detached.
David would stalk Donald Trump for a year in 1999, meeting him 6 times, playing the part of an obsessive fan. When it was rumored that he might run for president that year, David quite literally predicted the future and made Trump for President 2000 signs and campaigned on his behalf, taking the issue to the public on the streets of Manhattan at the time in performances recorded on video.
Yeah, you vote for Donald Trump for president?
Yeah,
He's going to run probably.
yeah, that's what's better.
Yeah?
He's going to see this?
Yeah, we're hoping that he sees it. You know, we're on one of...
Hi.
So what do you say? Donald Trump for president? Or?
Yes, I would say I like the guy. I like the guy.
Well, what about like Trump card? You know, like Trump. Like, you know, when you got the Trump card?
The Trump.
If you had one question you'd like to ask Donald Trump, because we're hoping to take this tape to him for the presidency.
Okay, we're concerned about immigrant laws.
How about his one-time tax on the ultra-wealthy? What do you think about that? You think that's a feasible plan? Trump's going to run his office and candidacy differently, is that he really wants to listen to what the public says about what he does for the most part. And so we want the public to have input into, like, the way he runs things.
What are some of the, as my coworker was saying, you know, greed kills. It's as simple as that. But,
the rich, I think, actually will go very well for him because, listen, which rich guy? He's a rich guy. He knows. Right. He knows.
My exact question is, how does Donald Trump care to solve the problem dealing with the bastardization of Medicare and Medicaid?
Donald Trump for president.
Donald Trump president, yes!
Trump for president.
Questions. What are some of the questions you're asking people?
Isn't that what the Republicans are complaining about that Clinton does? He runs his office by polls. Right. Isn't that the same thing as listening to what the public wants? I mean, the Republicans are constantly complaining that Clinton runs by polls.
Right.
He runs the economy. I got no problem.
He runs the economy like he runs his business.
Yeah.
You know, if
but
the
then
country
you've got too
was
much
run
capitalism.
I noticed there's no internet site here.
There is a website.
Okay. It should be on his sign.
It should be on the sign.
The internet's very important. We want to see. Don't want to see those restraints on the internet that we're hearing about all the time. The internet's a very important place.
Right,
it's what
absolutely.
It's my living.
He does have an exploratory website, which you just go up Donald Trump for president. Yep.
According to David, it was meant as a dark foreshadowing of the time we now live in. In 2000, although part of his earlier work, it has been described as his most infamous, even by him, when he conducted a one-year impersonation of Alex von Furstenberg, the son of famous fashion designer Diane von Furstenberg. Quote, "I snuck into the VIP events and cheesy celebrity parties in New York City, meeting the rich and famous and being photographed with them. I even snuck into a presidential event and met President Bill Clinton and Hillary as Alex."
So I had it mailed to my address. Yeah, I think that's good.
60 photographs document the nightlife of Alex and formed my first New York solo show in the year 2000. I took the story to the press and it created a national scandal at the time, appearing on ABC 2020 TV news and on the front page of the New York Observer. I'm well versed into turning myself or others into illusions. End quote. In 2001, David would take up the job at Madame Tussauds Wax Museum for 6 months in order to stage a work of immersive reality performance art.
I'd like to welcome everybody to the Madame Tussauds Wax Museum. I'm going to take you up to the first exhibit on the 9th floor called the Opening Night Party, my favorite room in the attraction, by the way.
I said, you're not real? Oh, you're real. You're real.
Throughout your self-guided tour, you're free to take as many pictures as you want, shoot as much America's Funniest Home Videos as you see fit. If you have any questions along the way, talk to people dressed like me. Remember, we're real.
You want us to come in? Us to go in? Did you want us to come in?
I guess so. He's fake. No, the guy's not fake.
Everybody's fake.
What?
Everybody's fake.
Everybody's fake. Are you fake?
I don't know.
Yes, she's fake, except for the mouth.
Except for the mouth?
The mouth still works.
Little did you know when we scanned your ticket downstairs that you actually scanned your whole personality into our mastermind computer, and you're now about to enter virtual reality. In fact, you're already in it, so nothing is real at all.
Okay, so if I smack somebody in the face, they won't feel it.
That's right.
Okay.
What's up, dog?
Oh my God!
Is he real?
Reagan over there.
Right.
He's not a real president, right? Why is Bill Clinton not here?
Bill Clinton is in London, is the official company response to that.
Mandela is over there, right?
Right. That makes sense, right? Yes, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, well, the thing is there's only so much room in this room for history, right? So who decides?
All these people are here. Someone so popular, actually.
Yeah.
I just can't believe it.
Quote, I saw it as a ready-made theatre and set full of actors, going undercover as a regular guy from New Jersey, wearing the required employee jester costume. My job was to be an entertainer and tour guide for the guests. I was interested in a wax museum because not only was it really weird and creepy, but also out of an ongoing interest in the dark side of celebrity in American consumerist culture. The wax figures trace a relationship between fame and morality as capitalist propaganda. The environment was hyper-media saturated. The realistic wax replicas projected an undeathly unreality around them, often making it difficult to discern who was real and who was simulacra. End quote. Another interesting direction David would take in his early career would involve fashion. Aside from his proficiency in painting, sculpture, and drawing, David has also always adored textiles. Even when looking at his performance art today, you can tell that there is a lot of care and attention to the many masks and costumes he makes. David would explain this in great detail in another interview he did for RavelingMagazine.com as follows. Because clothing is worn on the body, it deals directly with the self as symbol and appearance and identity, some of the core threads of my work. I made clothing by subverting and modifying vintage conservative suits and shirts. It was sold in stores and I got a lot of press as David Henry Brown Jr., the fashion designer. I've worked heavily in costume with myself and a group of friends that later became known as the Fantastic Nobodies. End quote. Following the scandal of the Alex von Furstenberg stunt, David began to feel that he was beginning to run out of territory. As fun as it was to infiltrate celebrity culture, it would come with a lot of backlash, and David's heart was set on trying something new.
I like being on camera, but for the other celebrity pieces, it kind of drove me crazy, using my real face and being on national TV and looking like something amazing. But actually, I was struggling with a lot of stuff, and I was fucking broke. And that disparity started to drive me nuts, really living with it. Because people were like, oh my God, you're so successful. Oh my God, you must have so much money. No. It was so much shit I had built this insane delusional hallucination machine through von Furstenberg especially. And actually living with it, I was too emotionally young to know how to live with it. But that's why actually I don't use my real face in my work anymore. Because it's basically a survival tactic. And it's also, the Fantastic Nobodies showed how to use face paint, wear masks, all this stuff to free yourself from yourself. You know, I hadn't quite really figured out how to free myself from myself in von Furstenberg, but through the Nobodies and Mark especially, who's a brilliantly creative guy, he would just come to my house dressed up really weird, and we would go out together. It was just like that every day. But I began to shoot Polaroids, and there's thousands of them. From 2003 to about 2009. And then I also got a DV recorder secondhand in 2005, and I started really making much more videos of us doing our stuff. Well, we really were rejected hardcore by the art world, even more so than my earlier work. So we just would go up on road trips and go camping and make weird stuff in the woods and do strange things, entertainment for each other. Maybe people did 100,000 years ago, except I had the camera and I recorded a chunk of it for sure. But it was very removed. We were pretty disgusted with the United States. I think it took a very fascist turn that we're still on. It became even more of a corporatist warmongering state after 9/11. Absolutely. And I think we had good reason to be disgusted. And it felt like there was nothing we could do. And then we were fuck everything. We're just gonna And it was still a time before social media and phones where you could kind of create your own bubble much more and just be like, fuck the rest of the world.
By 2007, David would land himself a residency in Basel, Switzerland, during which he would also slowly form a friendship with the staff of a local pizza restaurant across the street from a major museum called the Baylor Foundation. The pizza place was the only spot to eat at night, and so he would frequent it often. Quote, "They had Picasso posters on the wall to loosely appeal to the museum crowd, and the establishment reminded me of my childhood pizza place in Pennsylvania where I grew up. I proposed an art show about pizza to the owners. I installed a series of felt banners about pizza as a consumerist religious icon. I moved to Berlin that summer and produced a solo show entitled Pizza Infinity at Brottenspiel, a young gallery in Berlin. I made a huge Last Supper with pizza banner and a corresponding Last Supper table in the room, meant to mimic the image on the wall. I served pizza and beer and invited the audience to sit around the table. The Last Supper on the wall correlated with the people at the table in an odd and surreal manner." End quote. Following this, he would continue to produce many other pizza banners and showed them at art fairs in Miami, New York, and Puerto Rico. According to David, the work was intentionally childlike in its aesthetic at times in order to probe the deeper meaning and the feel in consumerist culture. Quote, "I felt that the pizza was a metaphor for the body. I was often combining figures and pizzas together in the compositions." End quote. As for the Fantastic Nobody Collective, it would be within this decade that the group would ultimately disband due to creative and personal differences.
We started fighting more and more, including a fist fight at the airport one time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, man. Well, there was a lot. We were broke, and we were trying to do a lot. And I was pushing the collective, I think, a lot more beyond their comfort zone, because I basically have a lot of ambitions to make work that's jarring or provocative. I want to reach more people. I think I want to reach more people because, I don't know, I just think it's important to. The more people I reach, like the more it becomes like a call and response feedback loop to increasingly create more creativity, and I think to inspire more people too. I know I'm sure on the internet I've inspired like thousands and thousands of people. I've really changed, my mission of like showing people that they don't have to just like make a cute little abstract painting on the wall, that like creativity is like so much more than that. And like, why are we doing that? Yeah. I think that my mission is I've already done it, but sometimes I feel bad with the Nobodies is that like I pushed us into, I tried to mold it into what I wanted for myself.
Right.
Which was to really take really wild art and like make it sellable. Let's sell it. I love the idea of like selling something really truthful and really wild and really deep. Why can't we do it? But actually the answer is it's really, really hard. And I'm living it right now, and I can tell you that it's like there's so much headwind against me. So much. I don't know how I survived. And like most of my friends have not survived as artists, basically. I'm like one of the very few that's figured out how to prosper and develop the work and like not compromise very much.
Yeah.
Although it would be the end of a collective, due to this ambition to push more boundaries, it would seem David was now slowly but surely solidifying his status as an exciting up-and-coming artist. Not only within his newly adopted city of New York, but even abroad, he was beginning to make a name for himself. But that would be nothing in comparison to the worldwide attention he would receive and the impact he would create later in 2016 from, in fact, an old project of his that first started in the mid-90s, one that you may have even seen before without realizing. The human Weeble Wobble first came to fruition in 1994, back in New York, when David would design it for a performance art event called the Deviant Playground.
I first made the Weeble Wobble in 1994. A friend of mine organized a kind of pop-up performance night called the Deviant Playground, and artists were asked to make stuff that deviants could play on, and it was a mix between like the Williamsburg, Brooklyn, like freak underground performance art scene, which I was part of, and like the leather boy, like bondage scene, etc., doms and stuff like that in Manhattan. So the idea was to bring the two scenes together into a deviant playground, and I just was like, human Weeble Wobble.
There were questions abound as to whether or not it would even work, and it was a bold and exciting experiment at the time. Quote, "As soon as I had fabricated it, I gave it a test and wrote it beautifully. I had the original Weeble in Williamsburg, Brooklyn for many years, until it disappeared in 2003. It was fascinating to ride, and I loved to let the audience play on it. In this sense, it is a sculpture that breaks the fourth wall, unifying the audience and the artwork into a creative whole. The audience takes care of the work and each other, often teaching newcomers how to use it. The Weeble creates its own society with its own sense of governance. I released footage of me riding the Weeble in 2001 onto Instagram in 2016, and the video went viral." End quote. His presence on social media would only continue to climb when the sculpture was featured in a Vice video that covered an open to the public riding event and interviews with David at Super Chief Gallery in Bushwick in February of 2018. Around this time would also be the kickstart of a new project inspired by the fantastic Nobodies that David had been working on in the background. A project that has been ongoing ever since, and would introduce onlookers to some of David's most extraordinary, colourful, and most memorable performance art to date.
I'm David Henry Nobody Jr. and welcome to my brain.
In 2014, David Henry joined Instagram for the first time, and over the years he became fascinated in how the majority of accounts would use the platform. He would also realise how many people on social media would adopt what he calls digital masks. As the phrase might suggest, it describes the nature of how people create their own digital reality, a heavily edited and manipulated representation of the true self. Eager to explore another, practically taboo side of this phenomenon by the standards of mainstream society, David Henry Nobody Jr. would take over once again in the creative process to begin arguably one of his most impactful projects.
In like the spring of 2016, when I really started to 15 and 16, where I really started to sculpt and paint on myself and all the kind of stuff mainly on my head and shoulders.
Yeah,
I started to work faster and faster and really a lot of content, I really started to rattle the app, and I got attention for it. And I got some press, I think, with High Fructose. They did a write-up on me, and then Vice approached me, and then I won a suggested user award from Instagram, where they DM'd me and said, "You've just won a suggested user award in March of 2016. And I went from 2,500 followers to 45,000 followers in 2 weeks flat.
Wow.
And I would pick up the app and it would be 1,000 comments. Well, what was happening is that the Instagram was putting on the explore page or whatever that was back then, and they were as soon as you opened the app, you saw my most fucked up video first. So they were kind of using me for hate porn, basically.
Right.
And my work blew up from that.
The character of David Henry Nobody Jr. would in fact be the perfect fit for this concept. The use of the term nobody in this context reflects the notion of how when you're online, on social media, and using a smartphone, in a very real sense you have no body. All that remains is a consciousness, something that David wanted to use to his creative advantage.
Lots of watermelon, lots and lots of watermelon.
David would one day coin the phrase resemblage, a combination of the words resemble and collage, to describe the type of shape-shifting physical self-portraits created by the character of David Nobody, which have taken center stage on his social media over the years. Essentially, resemblage is physically collaging on the face and body and recording it so it looks like CGI, AI, or Photoshop, an almost mimicry of a computer-generated appearance, created manually, in order to look inside a character that wears their inner lives on their exterior.
I am nobody. There is no.
The fantastic mini-documentary created by filmmaker Keith Aronowitz, which I've left a link for in the description below, explores the creative process of Resemblage up close, as well as the themes behind each jarring creation. As David explains in the documentary, quote, "I do it because I'm interested in how people seem to look at reality through a digital apparatus, such as a smartphone or social media. And I want to bring the feeling of that into the physical world, because I think it's really happening, and that's really the point of my interest in Resemblage and virtual reality versus the world that we live in. The more time we spend looking at reality through our phones, the more the world itself begins to resemble how you see things, how you're mentally trained." End quote. In other words, Resemblage is like an inside-out person that shows a grotesque, cryptic, and traumatized side of humanity hidden behind the mask of the everyday. He wears the excess of consumerist society on his exterior self to expose and question it. The more of a facade that we put up, the more our irrational side unconsciously takes over. So when David says inside out person, he means he incorporates our weird inner lives into our exterior world of appearances, creating possibly better mental health, or at least a better sense of self-criticism.
That fucking sucks, man.
One of his most recognizable periods during Resemblage would be his use of food products to create his art, ranging from elegant and almost beautiful to purposely disgusting and chaotic. David has always been fascinated in the notion of waste as a subject for his art. As he explains, David Nobody wears food to show how we live in waste, and that we ourselves are essentially food for corporations. He believes that by literally wearing the waste, the impact is more perplexing than a drawing or painting. Or as he puts it, it places the subject matter right in your face by wearing it on the face. Even the reactions on social media and the internet to such performance art involving food, or indeed any of his creations, play a huge role in the creative process as well. This call and response system of shocked and outraged comments on most of David Nobody's work emphasizes the idea that they are in fact reacting to the nature of themselves and the world around them, rather than the character of David Nobody himself. At times, even hate comments make their way into the actual art, such as this piece, where David Nobody would simply display the user comment directly on his face, and again use food products to complete the theme. Not only does this exist with the online art of David Nobody, but its origins are in the structure of performance art as a whole. Much like the red carpet rollers mentioned earlier, where the audience decides their own meaning of the artwork, this can occur in both physical and virtual mediums.
There's no doubt that I work by call and response, and that's really the advantage of performance art. Is like the idea of being a painter is that the work comes alive and it kind of talks to you, like there's the male fantasy of the nude woman in the painting coming alive and like making love to you, right? I mean, that's kind of a metaphor for the seduction of the idea of talking to you. Because really, you don't want to place all the creative burden on yourself. You want to like actualize other things, tools that can help you, and that is life. You know, I don't think they see me. I think they see themselves. You know, when the piece is working correctly, you're really placing yourself into the avatar, for lack of a better word. At this point, it's kind of like an avatar. I think but that has to do with the medium of the internet has a certain capacity for like immense projection. You know, a lot of people feel very dejected when they death scroll through social media, and they make these unrealistic comparisons based on fantasy portrayals of how people show themselves on social media, and then you kind of feel like you can't live up to that. It gives people low self-esteem. Well, yeah, I'd like to fuck that up, man. That's terrible. But like the call and response, like I'm more selective at like what I respond to now, basically. Okay. And what you have to remember is that when people don't know who I am, in my work, they just think I'm like this really fucking weird guy that doesn't take a shower or something like that, right? It's a character, so they're responding to the character.
Of course, food and waste inspired performance art would not be the only striking element within David Nobody's work. In fact, in recent times he has immersed himself quite literally further into technology by incorporating it physically into his art. In some selfies and videos, you may notice props that move, spin, shudder, and wave back and forth, often achieved via dismantling and reassembling clockwork toys, or indeed anything else he can find, sometimes even setting them on fire. These are all made to specifically imitate CGI and digital animators. David is very influenced by Cool 3D World, Marjan Mogadam, and glitch artists like Louise Ponce or AI artist Claire Silver, who he's become friends with ever since. Eager to find out more about this side of Resemblage, I asked David if there was any further significance to this.
I've kind of moved more towards like kinetic sculptures that I wear on myself. I was really kind of more into putting food on myself a couple of years ago. Well, I kind of ran out of territory with it, and then other people started to rip it off heavily.
Right.
Or be influenced by it, or just like they branded themselves. Like there's one or two artists, like if I put food on myself now, they're like, oh, is this so-and-so? I'm like, oh shit.
Oh no.
So well, this is what happens, you know. I mean, you want to be influential, but I look for crap on the street. I look on Craigslist. I look on Amazon increasingly now, unfortunately. I'm always looking for weird gadgets and stuff and that I could use as motorized props. And I mean, I think the toys and dolls are kind of, I don't know. I mean, Mike Kelly used old stuffed animals in his work, and he called them like discarded emotions, basically. I think that's pretty powerful. But I mean, I think David Nobody really, it's part of the language of like sort of wearing the waste of society on yourself to see what'll happen, how it affects you and what you look like, and kind of like wearing our problems. I don't know. I'm a deformance artist.
David also frequently takes his art outside of his studio, not always limiting his performances to just his head and shoulders. Often you'll find many videos and images of him using his full body and even interacting directly with the public, again serving as an important element to the art itself.
I am here today to talk to you about my future old self. This is myself in the future. Mirror, mirror man in the future. Future where I think in order to survive we'll have to reflect each other much more so than we are. Thus the declaration of interdependence. A mirror image that everything mirrors everything else. So as you see in the mirror, mirror, mirror.
I mean, I think like part of being successful is like getting the best advice possible. I really sought out like the most exceptionally intelligent people. And Dominic was one, and Mark and Steve and these other guys in my collective were others.
Yeah.
I was able to meet people that were like sort of like-minded, but like really challenged me. And it was really through their advice that like I was able to become the artist that I am. You are the company that you keep, I guess. But there's a lot of trials and tribulations, I mean, I was really broke and I had a fucking hard time. And I'm lucky I survived this. And I am where I am. I mean, like I said, a lot of my friends didn't. They're not around, or they're sick, or they're mentally ill, or they're dead. It's like being an artist is a tough game. But I think like stay experimental, try and get around a good group, and don't be afraid to change groups if it's not working out. Keep changing groups. That's what I kind of did too, also, like, because groups kind of burn out also. I think like, a lot of people will tell you to make art whether you feel like it or not. And sometimes you won't feel like it. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of emphasis on the moment and the super present on the internet.
Yes.
You have to just keep going.
The more I've gotten to know David, and even his ever-transforming character of David Henry Nobody Jr., the more I realise and admire how much of his art career as a whole is ever-transforming as well. The world of art, after all, is changing dramatically all the time, in both how we experience it and how we sell it, and that is absolutely no exception for David. It would be during the peak of a COVID-19 pandemic, a period obviously notorious for how much it negatively affected small business owners, self-employment, and of course, artists of all kinds. Henry too would face troubles until he eventually was introduced to something known as non-fungible tokens, or more commonly referred to as NFTs.
Yeah, what was your first experience with NFTs?
It was immediately good. It's been amazing to be able to sell my most ephemeral work, which is really my videos. I mean, I have physical print editions of my photographs. I used to sell those, although less, because people are asking for NFTs more often, and I haven't kept up on promoting the photos, but they are for sale. But I think it's like a little hard to wrap your head around exactly what are you buying. That's what like traditional art world collectors don't understand. Like what are you buying exactly? You are buying a file that comes from my digital unique wallet. I'm making a contract that's basically code, a unique, non-fungible, I mean, you can't change it or alter it, code it's on a blockchain where all the actions regarding like when I minted and made the piece, who made offers on it, who owns it, who flipped it, what the price was, everything is transparent. It's all on a ledger. Now, this is something that like a lot of the art world dreads, because when you go into a gallery, you don't know who owns what or like who, what they paid for it. And that's really for money laundering, basically. Now, people accuse crypto of money laundering too, and there is that. And there is wallet washing also in NFTs, I'm sure, but I think that the idea of like financial transparency is fairly threatening to the banking system, basically. Right. Absolutely. And to art also. But for the artist, it's very empowering. It has been. So we all got unemployment basically, like during the pandemic, and it saved my ass. Like my business went to zero. And I think like in February of 21, by then there was like news about this new technology was in the news. My mom sent me something from the New York Times that someone had sold something called an NFT for $80,000. And she's like, you should try this. And I was like, no one's gonna pay that much for my work. So around February of 21, I started getting direct DMs from what's known as degens, as they describe themselves, which means degenerate. And those are people who are addicted to crypto and NFTs. They call themselves degens. It's very cute. And there was like one or two of them who kept DMing me and said, dude, you gotta tokenize your work, man. Dude, have you tried NFTs? Your work is gonna blow up. They were just like, the market was entering a bull run. And I didn't understand that at the time, but like the fever was there. I mean, I was like, are you on crystal meth or something? I've never seen someone so manic. So I answered one of them, who had turned out to be my good friend in the NFT scene, kind of like one of my advisors also too. He, told me about it. And so I had like all these my pieces, all the videos that were like sitting on my computer that had gone like mega viral. Like I think my first two was one where I take a paint roller and my head is in a paint tray and I'm splooshing peanut butter like all over my face, and then I go paint to painting with it. And there's another one where I make myself into a fountain of artificial Sunny D or fake orange juice. With like plastic bags on my face. I minted those two and I sold them like basically right away for around like about 1.25 ETH, which was like, I don't know, probably about, I forget what it was in 21, probably about $2,000 back then, basically. So I made like $4,000 in 1 week and I was just like stunned. And those were bought by a very prominent artist, James Jean, who's a huge artist. He has 1 million followers. He's a very prominent, he draws and paints and he makes NFTs too. He's come back and collected more. So it kind of took off from there.
His success in utilizing NFTs and Web3 is again paramount to one of the most admirable traits of Henry, in how instead of being deterred or daunted by the changes in art, technology, or even the world around him, he instead embraces it. By his own admission, other good friends of his in the art world have not been so lucky and been able to weather this storm of change, still stuck in a fraction of time or even within their own world. Whilst David, on the other hand, dives straight into the deep end of change and becomes the world he sees around him. His work still continues to spark outrage, laughter, inspiration, and calls and responses all over the internet, proving his theory further each passing day of how insecure and obsessive our image-based online culture truly is. In a sense, you could even call me his next victim. I too at times have been very reactionary from the things I've seen, heard, or read on the internet, and me feeling compelled to reach out to him and work on this very video about his weird and wonderful performance art and backstory could very well be a result of that exact same bone in my body. Whether you like or hate his art, whether you agree or disagree with his theories, one plain fact still remains undeniable that he expresses so perfectly, which is that times are changing at breakneck speed, both in the physical world and in the conscious world. Which leads me to want to end this video on a particular quote of his that gives us quite an interesting flavour of what may come due to this revolution on technology and the internet. Quote, "I often wonder if we will someday leave our physical bodies behind, and will all of us become fantastic nobodies? But technology certainly suggests it. The question for the next generation remains, how will we adapt to stay connected?" End quote.
Hey, can you get me a flight on SpaceX? I want to get out of here. Nice. I want to leave America. I'm sick of it. Yeah. I'm done with this planet. Excuse me, do you know how I get off planet Earth?
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this video informative and interesting, and I hope I've inspired you to check out the more prolific work of David Henry Nobody Jr. As I mentioned, he's very prevalent on social media, so please be sure to keep up with his new projects by giving him a follow on Instagram or Twitter. I've also left a link below to his Linktree to take you straight to his website, his collections, other documentaries, and much more. Before I fully wrap up, it's that time again for Artist Corner. Here I get to share some artwork sent in by one of my lovely viewers, and today I've chosen the beautifully atmospheric creations by the artist who goes by the name of Eurykady. Eurykady has been drawing since she can remember, quite unable to imagine life without doing art, and is something she believes gives her life meaning, frequently battling problems that we face as creatives sometimes, which was the ability to make her artwork a career. Though after obtaining many commissions for furry art, her art career quickly began to take root from there. She is self-taught, receiving only occasional help with her semi-realism skills from an art mentor named Nacho Culver, who she said made one session feel like an entire year's worth of progress. Although a lot of strange monsters may appear in her work, when I asked about it, she gave me a surprising and moving answer to this, which is each time she never intends for the characters to be creepy or purposely weird. Her main goal instead is for them to feel genuine, to feel most relatable to her. She tells me her work is normally inspired by the unconscious and her emotional states. Sometimes a word or sentence can inspire her, often resulting in her work acquiring the title first before a single line is drawn. Quote, I remember reading somewhere that kids who draw characters without faces struggle with signaling their emotions, and I think I can relate to that. I've also read that art therapy is helpful to people who struggle with emotional detachment, and I came to a conclusion that I must have subconsciously started self-therapy when I picked up drawing. So it seems like art is not just a hobby, but an emotional need for me. End quote. I highly applaud her work for having so much attention to detail and for being so expressive. It's a proven safe place for her emotions and ideas that she's also not afraid to show to the rest of the world. And I really have the honour of sharing her art to you today. And speaking of which, if you'd like to see more of her amazing work, please look up the links you see here on screen, or please click the links I left in the below description to take you straight there. If you too are an artist and would like a potential spot at the end of one of my videos, I'd love to hear from you. Please send me an email to blinddweller@gmail.com or feel free to reach out to me on Instagram. Please also be sure to head to my Discord server, Blind Dwellers Art Club, if you'd like to meet new artists, network, or share your own artwork. Finally, as always, a big undying thank you to all my channel members and patrons, and a special shout out to my top tier donators. Tyler Butler, Harley Simpson, Eric Lamarca, Tyler Rogers, Dave MC, Booty Magic, Molotail, The New On Goem 24, Equatamok, Ken B, Lee Flowers, Calvin Kai, John Allen, Akaiza, Carol J, Fernando Achicaro, Large Fatty or Big Chad, Charlie Sanchezy, and Port Perea. That's all from me for today then. See you in the next one soon. Keep being creative, and bye for now.